She vanished from a school hallway 3 days before Valentine's Day. No blood, no screams. And by the time everyone understood this wasn't a teenage rebellion, it was already too late. The town blamed the wrong boy, questioned the wrong adults, and built a story that felt comfortable enough to believe. Meanwhile, the truth stayed quiet, waiting. My name doesn't matter anymore. I was a detective for 27 years. By the late 80s, I had already seen what happens when people rush to conclusions. But this case stayed with me, because everyone saw her every day, and still no one really saw her. 1988, Millstone, Pennsylvania, a town of just over 30,000. Her name was Lisa Matthew, 17 years old, senior year. Student council events, pep rallies. A girl who knew exactly where she stood in the school hierarchy. People like to remember missing girls as perfect. Lisa wasn't. She could be cruel, dismissive, and painfully aware of her influence. Valentine's Day was 3 days away. The school was already covered in red paper hearts and cheap decorations. And Lisa loved the attention that came with it. And that matters, because whoever took her didn't take an idea. He took a real person with flaws and sharp edges. Friday, February 11th, 1988. Last period ended at 3:10 p.m. Lisa was seen walking toward the east hallway, the one with the old lockers no one used anymore. She never made it to the parking lot, never made it home. Lisa didn't come home Friday night. By Saturday morning, her parents were worried. By Saturday evening, they were calling friends. Everyone gave the same answer. We thought she was with you. Her boyfriend said they had fought. He thought she needed space. Her friend said she'd done this before, disappearing for a day or two after arguments. By Sunday night, the silence stopped making sense. Lisa didn't skip school without warning, and she never ignored her mother's calls for this long. Early Monday morning, the missing person report was filed, less than 72 hours after she vanished. Lisa's father had worked in law enforcement years earlier. He knew how these cases usually unfolded. He didn't wait for hope to turn into regret. Her mother was on shift at the hospital that weekend. She had seen what delay does to outcomes. Before Lisa disappeared, there had already been tension at home. Not about friends, about school. She was failing history, the only subject she was failing. The history teacher called her parents more than once, about grades, about missed work, about discipline. Lisa said he had singled her out, that he corrected her more than others. She called him weird in front of her friends. Her parents heard attitude, not alarm. After Lisa vanished, those phone calls sounded different. So did the word weird. Fear rearranges memory. Lisa's father didn't think about grades anymore. He thought about fixation, about an adult who couldn't let go and kept calling the house. That's why he went to the school. Not to accuse, to confirm. He asked about the calls, about why his daughter's name came up so often. When the teacher became defensive, his hand moved to his jacket. He didn't pull the gun. He wanted certainty. He left without proof. But the teacher's name stayed in the file. Not because of evidence. Because fear needed a shape. The search began fast, and it lasted a month. 4 weeks of interviews, lockers, woods, basements, classrooms. 4 weeks of noise, and one place completely silent that no one thought to check. February 14th came and went. Balloons deflated. Candy went on sale. And Lisa Matthew was still missing. By the end of that month, the town wanted closure, and it was ready to accept the wrong kind. When a girl disappears from a high school, the town doesn't start with questions. It starts with names. 3 names surfaced within the first 48 hours. 3 stories that felt familiar enough to believe. Mark Delaney, 17, varsity baseball. And the last person publicly seen arguing with Lisa Matthew. Their argument happened 2 days before she vanished. Witnesses remembered raised voices, a slammed locker, and Lisa walking away smiling. The kind of smile meant to hurt. Mark had no alibi for Friday afternoon. Practice had been canceled. He went home alone. The town liked this version. It was simple, emotional, and it fit neatly into the shape of anger. But anger leaves traces, and Mark didn't. Then there was Thomas Reed, quiet, awkward, known more for being laughed at than listened to. Lisa had been seen mocking him weeks earlier. A note taped to his locker. Laughter in the hallway. Thomas had written her a Valentine card once, years ago. It was returned, folded in half, with a word written across the front. Loser. That detail stayed in the file. It shouldn't have. Because pain, like anger, also leaves marks. And Thomas had plenty. The third name made people uncomfortable. A history teacher. Male. Late 30s. Lisa had been failing his class. He'd called her parents. She'd called him creepy in front of friends. No evidence. No witnesses. Just discomfort. 3 suspects. 3 stories. And none of them explained how a girl vanished without a sound. The school became a crime scene. Lockers opened. Trash bins emptied. Desks checked. Hundreds of Valentine's cards were collected. Red, pink, handwritten, anonymous. Most were jokes. Some were cruel. A few were quiet. There was one card no one could place. No name, no handwriting anyone recognized. Inside, there was only one line written carefully. 3:10 p.m., our place. It was logged and forgotten. By the second week, pressure built. Parents wanted answers. The school wanted normalcy, and the department wanted progress. That's when we made our first real mistake. By the third week, the case stopped being about Lisa Matthew. It became about momentum. By the third week, we weren't just looking for answers. We were eliminating noise. Some names didn't survive a timeline. The history teacher was one of them. On the afternoon Lisa disappeared, he wasn't at the school. Signed out. Logged. It didn't matter how uncomfortable he made people feel. He wasn't there. That left fewer names and less patience. Missing girl cases don't age well. Every day without answers makes people louder, and fear doesn't ask for accuracy. Thomas Reed was arrested on day 19, not because of evidence, because of narrative. Bullied, humiliated, known to write things down, known to keep to himself. Someone remembered the Valentine card. Someone else remembered the locker note. Together, it sounded like motive. Thomas cried in the interview room. Not loudly, not convincingly. Just enough to make everyone uncomfortable. He denied everything. Then he doubted himself. Then he went quiet. That silence was misread as guilt. In my experience, real monsters talk too much. After 11 hours, Thomas signed a statement. Not a confession, a reconstruction. It described fear, anger, and a version of events that matched what we wanted to hear. It did not describe where Lisa was. The arrest made the news. Parents felt a fragile sense of hope. Teachers slowly returned to routine. Valentine's decorations finally came down. The school returned to routine. Closure doesn't always mean truth. Sometimes it just means relief. There was one problem we couldn't solve. Thomas couldn't explain how Lisa left the building. No witness saw them together. No camera. No sound. It was as if she had followed someone willingly. There was no sign of force, no struggle reported, and no reason for her to follow Thomas Reed. That question stayed unanswered, filed, ignored. But one thing remained unchanged. Thomas Reed wouldn't or couldn't say where Lisa Matthew was. After an arrest, cases are supposed to quiet down. Paperwork replaces urgency. Doubt gets filed away. That didn't happen here. Thomas Reed sat in his cell and said nothing. No new details. No revisions. No bargaining. People who lie usually adjust their stories. Thomas didn't. It was the wrong kind of quiet. We went back to the school. Not officially. Quietly. Same hallways. Same lockers. Same bulletin boards. But something felt off. Not missing. Misplaced. Lisa didn't leave class early. She didn't run. She didn't rush. Witnesses described her as calm, focused, almost expectant. Someone had timed it, not to the minute, but close enough. Last bell. Shift change. noise in the halls. That kind of timing doesn't come from impulse. We pulled the Valentine cards again, just in case. Most were easy to place. Friends, couples, jokes. One still wasn't. No glitter, no perfume, just a heart and a date. If Lisa followed someone willingly, it wasn't fear. It was expectation. By the end of that month, we had a suspect in custody and a case that refused to settle. And somewhere between routine and doubt, someone stayed invisible. Cases don't fall apart all at once. They crack. Ours cracked over something small. A timestamp. Thomas Reed's statement placed him near the east hallway at 3:05 p.m., 5 minutes before the last bell. But attendance records showed he was still marked present in class at 3:07. 2 minutes doesn't sound like much. Not unless you're trying to leave a building unnoticed. When we pressed him on it, Thomas didn't adjust his story. He didn't defend himself. He just shook his head. Innocent people panic. Guilty people improvise. Thomas did neither. We reopened the file. Not officially. Just enough to look without being seen. We rechecked the exits, the stairwells, the side doors. Nothing had changed. And that was the problem. For Thomas to take Lisa, he would have had to cross 2 crowded hallways. No witness remembered that, not even vaguely. The route didn't fit his body language, or hers. Lisa wasn't pulled. She wasn't rushed. She walked. Whoever she followed didn't need force, just certainty. Someone who knew where she would be, and when. There was one person who could have taken her out of that building without raising a single question. Someone she already trusted. They had argued the day before, loud enough for people to remember, which meant one thing. Reconciliation would have made sense. No force, no rush, just a familiar face and a reason to follow. I didn't move his name, but I stopped moving past it. We had a choice. Close the file, or let it breathe. Letting it breathe meant risking everything we'd already told the town. That night, I wrote one sentence in my notes. Not evidence. A warning. We're holding the wrong boy.